woke up as the villainess in a novel. If I don't change the story, I die. In her original world, Amelia was a brilliant, rational, and lonely lawyer who died suddenly after being betrayed by her most trusted friend. Upon awakening, she finds herself in the body of the villain from a novel her niece used to read compulsively. Duchess Serina Valehart, known for being cruel, obsessive, and cursed to die tragically for her love of the crown prince. But this new Serina is not interested in dying, and much less in suffering for a man. When Amelia opened her eyes, she saw silk. Soft, golden silk above her. Lace curtains moving gently in the breeze, a faint scent of roses in the air, and a very confused maid standing at the foot of her bed, holding a tray of tea with trembling hands. "My lady?" the girl whispered. You're awake?" Amelia blinked, then blinked again. Her last memory had been a courtroom, a betrayal, the cold floor. And then, now, a chandelier, a palace, and, oh, the distinct sound of someone knocking very politely but with impatience on the other side of a giant double door. "My Lady Serina?" a man's voice called, stiff and cautious. "The prince is awaiting your reply regarding tonight's dinner. You shouted that you never wanted to see him again. Shall we confirm that?" "Prince? Dinner? Serina?" Amelia sat up and looked at her hands. Slim, pale, delicate. These were not her hands. Then the memories came. Not hers, but someone else's. A whirlwind of drama, of accusations, of desperate, obsessive love. Crying in the rain, slapping maids, declaring war over jealousy, poisoned tea, broken shoes. This was a romance novel. No, a romance drama. One her niece had begged her to read, and she had laughed at it once. She was Serina Valehart now, and Serina was the villainess. The spoiled, selfish, evil duchess who was meant to go mad with jealousy and die pathetically in the name of unrequited love. Amelia, Serina, blinked again. Then she started laughing. The maid dropped the tray. "Your Grace?" "Oh, don't look so afraid," Serina said, swinging her legs out of bed. "I'm not going to throw anything at you. Not today." The maid nodded hesitantly, clearly unsure whether this was good or bad. Serina stood and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back at her had ruby red lips, raven black hair, and sharp cheekbones that could slice through silk. Beautiful, powerful, dramatic. "Oh," she said with a smile, "this is going to be fun." Across the palace halls, whispers spread fast. "Her Grace is smiling? She hasn't screamed at anyone all day." She asked the chef if he was tired and told him to take a break. Did she hit her head? But Serina didn't care. Let them whisper. In the original story, Serina would spend the next 2 months begging for the prince's attention while ruining every potential alliance in the empire. She'd break down at the imperial ball, drink too much, make a scene, and then poison chocolates. Tragic end. But not this time. This Serina had a law degree, a memory like a steel trap, and zero interest in dying for a man who once compared her to a loud peacock. That evening, when the prince finally came to call, Serina was lounging on her chaise reading a very boring report on tax reform and genuinely enjoying it. He entered without waiting for permission. "Serina," he said, voice low and performative, "I came to make sure you're well." Serina looked up and tilted her head. "Oh, how thoughtful." He blinked. You're not angry?" "Oh, I'm furious," she said sweetly, "but mostly bored." He frowned. "This isn't like you." "I know," she sighed. "I'm working on that." She stood, walked up to him, and patted his cheek like one might do to a child. "You should go, Your Highness. I'm no longer interested in tragic endings." And just like that, she shut the door in his stunned face. Later, that night, Serina sat by the window, legs tucked under her, watching the moon. The maid brought her a blanket and didn't flinch this time. "Thank you," Serina said. "My lady, Are you really all right? Serina smiled. I'm better than all right. She looked out at the imperial city, full of plots and power plays, and felt her heart beat with new purpose. I've been given a second life, and this time, I'm not wasting it chasing after anyone's shadow. She tapped her finger on the glass. Let's see how they like a villainess who refuses to play the villain. The first morning in the Valehart estate was dramatic. Serina woke up to silk sheets, a servant named Mila nearly fainting at the sight of her being awake, and a screaming match outside the door that involved the words apology, ruined dress, and duel. She blinked. This was not how villains were supposed to start their redemption arcs. Or maybe it was. By the time she walked down to breakfast, her hair loosely pinned, her robe slightly off one shoulder, and her smirk sharp enough to slice an ego, 3 maids had run into walls and a footman tripped over a carpet just to offer her tea. Good morning, she said sweetly to the breakfast table, where her father, the Duke, sat in stiff silence, and her brother gave her a look like he was trying to remember if she always walked like she owned the floorboards. Serina, the Duke said carefully, you seem different this morning. Oh, I had the most fascinating dream, she replied, slicing a peach. In it, I realized I've been utterly boring my entire life, so I thought I'd try something new. Her father frowned. Her brother choked on his coffee. And Serina? She winked, because if she was going to be trapped in this body, in this aristocratic soap opera, she was going to have fun properly. By mid-morning, Serina had already accidentally walked past the Crown Prince's carriage and waved as if they were childhood friends. By afternoon, she had complimented her worst enemy's embroidery in front of the Queen Dowager. By evening, she had rewritten the entire gossip cycle of the capital. No more Serina Valehart, jealous villainess, heartless socialite, enemy of the heroine. Now it was, did you hear? Serina Valehart is planning to fund a free clinic for injured soldiers. I heard she rescued a kitten from the river, still wearing her emerald slippers. She asked Lady Corva to join her in a book club. Lady Corva, the woman she once dumped tea on. Of course, not everyone was impressed. And the Crown Prince? He didn't know whether to be intrigued or insulted. After all, Serina had once declared herself his fated bride in front of the court. Now? She walked past him at galas like he was background noise. She complimented his shoes and asked after his horse's health. And worse, she laughed. With guards, with stable boys, with foreign dignitaries. Serina Valehart, the former nightmare of noblewomen, had become unpredictable, which made her dangerous. It was during one of these chaotic afternoons, while Serina was pretending to get lost in the palace gardens, she wasn't, that she met him. Tall, broad, sun-touched skin and a scar across one cheek that made him look more real than every polished noble in the ballroom. He was leaning over a map with 2 officers when she strolled by humming a scandalous tavern song. He looked up. Their eyes met. And for a moment, Serina forgot what game she was playing. Because the man wasn't just attractive, he was dangerously calm. He didn't flinch, didn't raise a brow, didn't do any of the awkward stammering she'd grown used to inspiring in uniformed men. He just observed. I'm lost, Serina said, smiling like it was a challenge. You don't seem the type to get lost, he replied smoothly. I am the type, she said. I just never admit it. The officers glanced between them, awkward and confused. The general chuckled, folding his arms. You're Valehart. I am, she confirmed. But don't hold it against me. He looked amused. Wasn't planning to. She gave him a once-over, impressed. And you are? General Cale Thorne. Serina tilted her head. Ah, the war hero, the hammer of the West, the terror of bandits and bad table manners. The general laughed. Actually laughed. I see your reputation is well earned, he said. As is yours, she answered. A beat passed. So, she said, taking a step closer. Do you enjoy being a war hero, General? Or do you prefer garden strolls with scandalous noblewomen who get lost on purpose? He didn't move away. I prefer conversations that don't follow scripts, he said. That stopped her, for just a second. Then she smiled, not the practiced kind, not the villainous mask, but something smaller, more dangerous. Then we might get along just fine. And she walked away. The General Cale Thorne watched her go, not because she was beautiful, though she was, not because she was Serina Valehart, though the name echoed, but because for the first time in years, something about a person made him want to know more. Serina, meanwhile, returned to her estate, tossed her heels on a chaise and muttered to herself, now that was interesting. Because redemption arcs were fine, but scandals were where the fun began. After that day, things moved faster. Whispers followed her everywhere. Had Serina truly changed? Was she playing a new game, or had she left the board entirely? The noble families scrambled to understand her, to tame her, to trap her in the old narrative. But Serina had seen too much. She had lived too much. She'd felt the ache of being ignored, of trying and failing, of loving people who only saw her as a burden. So now, she laughed at rules. She danced with messengers instead of lords. She started rumors about herself just to see how fast they'd spread. And when she crossed paths with the general again, during a diplomatic banquet no less, she offered him a glass of wine and said, "Would you like to start a scandal?" He didn't smile, but he didn't say no either. She started new scandal with a cake. Not just any cake, a towering spectacle of whipped cream, sugared violets, and spun sugar shaped like the imperial crest. It was supposed to be the centerpiece of Lady Vanelle's charity banquet. It took 7 pastry chefs 3 days to construct. It cost more than most servants made in a year. Serina took one look at it and said, "That cake is begging to be knocked over." Lady Vanelle gasped. "You wouldn't." "Of course not," Serina said sweetly, reaching for a spoon. "I would never sabotage a charitable event. That would be scandalous." And then she winked. 10 minutes later, the cake toppled in spectacular fashion. No one could prove how it happened. A misstep, a clumsy guest, a mysterious gust of wind. But every head turned to Serina Valehart, who was calmly sipping champagne and humming the national anthem. The whispers began immediately. She did it on purpose, to insult Lady Vanelle, to mock the cause, to steal the spotlight. They weren't entirely wrong, but they weren't entirely right either. Because Serina hadn't pushed the cake, not directly. All she had done was start a conversation with the most nervous noble in the room, right beside the dessert table. She'd leaned in, whispered something outrageous, and then watched the dominoes fall. Lady Vanelle was inconsolable. The Queen Dowager laughed so hard she spilled her wine. The Crown Prince frowned. The General, Kyle, just raised a brow across the ballroom and mouthed, "Really?" Serina curtsied in response. Later that evening, after the banquet had descended into polite chaos, Serina found herself on the palace terrace, staring up at the stars. Kale joined her, silent at first. "You know," he said finally, "you terrify them." "Is that admiration I hear, General?" "It's respect, or at least morbid curiosity." She laughed. "I'll take it." They stood in comfortable silence. Then Kyle added, "Why do it? The cake, the chaos, the constant toe-stepping. You were already feared." Serina turned toward him, smile fading slightly. "Because fear isn't enough. Not anymore." He didn't press her. Instead, he offered his arm. "Come walk with me. Let the scandal chase someone else for a while." She took it. And for the first time that night, the whispers faded into the background. The Crown Prince had always thought Serina Valehart would be the greatest obstacle in his carefully arranged life. From childhood, she had pursued him with embarrassing declarations and public theatrics. It had been exhausting, predictable, unavoidable. But now she laughed with diplomats, danced with generals, and whispered secrets to foreign princesses. She had not so much as glanced at him in 3 weeks. At first he was relieved, then curious, then unsettled. And finally, he forgot her. Not entirely, of course. Serina was not someone easily erased, but the weight of her obsession had lifted from his shoulders like a velvet cloak discarded in summer. He could breathe. And in that newfound space, something unexpected bloomed. Her name was Lady Amelina of Raventhorn, a visiting noblewoman from the Western Isles. She was poised but not haughty, sharp but kind. She reminded him of what dignity could look like when not tangled in desperation. Over several state functions, he found himself drawn to her grace, her quiet confidence. They walked together in rose gardens, shared opinions on trade and treaties, laughed at private jokes. It was, for the first time in years, easy. By the time he decided to ask for her hand, it felt less like strategy and more like something dangerously close to affection. But fate, it seemed, had not yet finished with Serina Valehart. The revelation came during a charity ball hosted by the Queen Dowager. The music was soft, the chandeliers glowing. The Crown Prince turned, ready to approach Lady Amelina and ask for the next dance, when he saw her already on the floor. With Serina Valehart, they were laughing, arms looped around each other's waists, whispering, twirling. He froze. Of all the alliances, of all the friendships she could have formed, why her? The music faded around the edges of his mind. Dancers moved like fog, and in the middle of it all, Serina caught his eye and winked. Later, in the garden, Lady Amelina found him brooding by a fountain. "You look like you swallowed a lemon," she teased. "I wasn't expecting that," he muttered. "That your old flame and your new interest might be friends?" He blinked. "Please," she said, rolling her eyes. "Serina told me everything, how you ignored her, toyed with her affections, and acted like a martyr whenever she tried to please you. Honestly, if you weren't a prince, I'd call it emotional cowardice." He stared, stunned. She smiled sweetly. "Don't worry. She's over you. But she did ask me to pass along a message." "What message?" Amelina leaned in, mock conspiratorial. She said, "Isn't it freeing, Highness? To finally be irrelevant to each other?" Then she kissed his cheek and walked back into the ballroom, leaving the prince blinking beside the fountain. Inside, Serina had taken over the piano bench, playing something fast and scandalously upbeat. A group of young nobles clapped along. The general stood nearby, arms folded, smiling. He leaned closer to her as she finished the piece. "You know, starting an international friendship just to unsettle a prince is a level of pettiness I aspire to." Serina grinned. "Oh, that was just a bonus. Amelina is delightful. You really are enjoying this new you, aren't you?" She tilted her head. "I'm not new. I'm just no longer edited by other people's expectations." He offered his arm. "Come, there's a terrace that needs disgracing." She took it with a curtsy. "Lead the way." And as they stepped into the night, Serina felt something settle in her chest. Not pride, not vengeance, but peace. For the first time, she wasn't chasing anything. She was choosing, and the world, chaotic and glittering, was finally playing by her rules. Would the prince ever understand what he lost? Perhaps. But that was no longer Serina's story to carry. Serina Valehart was supposed to ruin Lady Amelina. She was supposed to trip her at banquets, spill ink on her letters, whisper cruel rumors into noble ears until the girl ran home in disgrace. That was the plot. The role Serina had been written to play. But Serina Valehart, reborn and unbothered, had other plans. From the moment they met at the royal greenhouse, Serina knew Amelina was not her enemy. The girl was soft-spoken, painfully polite, and had the kind of eyes that always looked like they were trying not to cry. She was also, much to Serina's surprise, brilliant. They were supposed to hate each other. But by their second tea meeting, which Serina had crashed by accidentally sitting at the wrong table, Amelina was laughing. By the third, she was sharing pastries and secrets. By the fourth, she called Serina her friend. It was almost too easy, which is why the trouble came so quickly. It started with whispers. Of course it did. Lady Amelina, daughter of a minor noble from the eastern provinces, had caught the crown prince's attention. No longer obligated to pursue Serina, the prince had discovered genuine warmth in Amelina. They danced, they strolled through gardens. He even wrote her poetry, which, according to Serina's sources, was terrible but endearing. All seemed to be heading toward a royal engagement. And that, naturally, is when everything fell apart. It happened during a midsummer masquerade. Amelina wore a silver mask that shimmered like frost. The prince had eyes only for her. Serina, as always, hovered nearby with a glass of champagne and a sharp smile. Until the music stopped. Until the Queen Dowager stood. Until a servant rushed in, breathless, holding a letter sealed in the crest of the Northern Court. The accusations were simple but damning. Lady Amelina was already engaged. Her family had accepted a bride price from a foreign duke. She had lied to the royal family. Gasps echoed. Eyes narrowed. The prince froze. And Amelina, sweet, lovely Amelina, crumbled like sugar in rain. She tried to speak. Deny it. Explain. But someone had forged the documents well. The dates aligned. The names were spelled correctly. Even the seal was authentic. Serina watched it all from the edge of the ballroom, her heart pounding. This wasn't just scandal. This was sabotage. She recognized the handwriting on the forged letter. Lady Marceline, a longtime rival of the Queen Dowager. A woman who had hoped her own daughter would marry the prince. A woman who saw Amelina as an obstacle. And Serina? Serina had a choice. She could let the story unfold. Let Amelina fall. Let the court turn its venom on someone else for once. Or she could burn the script entirely. She stepped forward. "Your Majesty," Serina said, her voice smooth as satin, "if I may offer a clarification." All heads turned. Even Amelina looked stunned. "I was the one who introduced Amelina to that Northern Court duke," Serina lied effortlessly. "It was for a charity project. Nothing romantic. The letter you received, forgive me, but it was a draft proposal, not a marriage contract. I have a copy in my writing desk. Shall I fetch it?" The Queen Dowager arched a brow. "You meddle in foreign negotiations now, Lady Valehart." "Only when I'm bored." Laughter rippled across the room. Tension eased. Serina kept her smile. But inside, her blood boiled. She would not let Amelina be sacrificed. Not for politics. Not for jealousy. Not for a plotline written by someone who thought women were interchangeable. Later that night, in Amelina's chambers, the girl burst into tears. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked. Serina shrugged. "Because I know what it feels like to be blamed for things beyond your control. And because you're not just the heroine of someone else's story, Amelina. You deserve your own." The next morning, the Crown Prince publicly announced his intent to propose. And Serina? She smiled from the sidelines, the villainess who refused to let the story end in tragedy. But as she turned from the balcony, she found herself face to face with the general. "That was bold," he said. "I'm done being small." "You never were." And as he reached for her hand, the crowd cheering in the distance, Serina couldn't help but wonder. What if saving someone else's story was the beginning of finally saving her own? 2 months had passed since the wedding bells rang for the Crown Prince and Lady Amelina. The palace for once was quiet. No scandals, no duels, no whispered bets on who would cry at which ball. Just peace. Serina Valehart strolled through the garden with a parasol slung lazily over her shoulder, humming the most inappropriate tavern song she could remember. The birds didn't seem to mind. Neither did she. Because it was done. The heroine was married. The prince was blissfully distracted. And the story, the one that once led to Serina's downfall, had finally been rewritten. There would be no exile, no poisoned tea, no tragic end where she clung to a love that was never hers. She was free. She'd even sent Amelina a wedding gift, a silk-bound diary inscribed with the words, "Write your own story and make it scandalous." It felt like a fitting goodbye to the plot that never belonged to her. So now what? For the first time in this world, Serina had no more fires to put out, no schemes to avoid, no fated disasters to derail. She was a rich, well-connected noblewoman with a title, a fortune, and a reputation that had somehow gone from walking menace to eccentric philanthropist with excellent taste in scandal. Naturally, her first thought was, vacation. "I'm thinking the coast," she said aloud to herself as she packed. "Sun, wine, a scandalous novel in one hand and a fan in the other. Maybe I'll seduce a fisherman for fun, or buy a vineyard, or both." Mila, her maid, blinked. "Milady, is this a permanent move?" Serina shrugged, tossing silk gowns into a trunk. "I haven't decided. Depends on how dramatic the sunsets are." Truth was, she had no idea what she'd do next, but for once, she didn't need to know. For once, she wasn't running from anything, just walking away on her own terms. And then, he showed up, not with roses, not with a love letter, not with some swoon-worthy declaration at a ball. No, he walked into her drawing room at noon, covered in dust, boots muddy, hair windblown from riding across half the kingdom. General Thorne. The man who once said nothing when she asked, "Would you like to start a scandal?" The man who now looked at her like he was the one being scandalized. "Serina," he said, voice rough from the road. "You're leaving?" She didn't even blink. "News travels fast. Did the Queen send you? Or the kitchen staff? They've been weeping since I started packing." "I came because I heard from your brother." She raised a brow. "Which one? The one who glares or the one who owes me 10 gold for losing a duel?" "Your real brother. The one who knows you run when you're scared." That made her pause. Serina set down the hat she was pretending to fold and crossed her arms. "I'm not scared. I'm bored. Big difference." "Then stay and be bored," he said. "But don't leave." She blinked. "That's it? That's your big dramatic plea? Don't leave?" "You want dramatic?" He took a step closer. "Fine. I'll give you dramatic." And suddenly, Serina realized 2 things. 1, General Thorne was not the type to beg, and 2, he was very, very bad at hiding when he was desperate. "I don't have poems," he said, "or wine, or fancy speeches, but I know what it looks like when someone gives up right before the good part. And Serina, this is the good part." She swallowed. "I didn't fall in love with you because you saved the heroine, or because you rewrote your fate. I fell in love with you because you looked at a world built to break you and laughed in its face." Serina tried to smirk, failed. "And you're leaving," he added, voice lower now, "without ever asking if someone wanted you to stay." Her voice was quieter than she intended. "Do you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you make things interesting. Because you make me feel like something's alive again. Because every time you walk into a room I forget which side of the war I was on." She hated how her heart stuttered, hated how part of her wanted to drop the travel plans and start packing for something else, something terrifying and beautiful and permanent. But this was Serina Valehart, so she said, "Is this your idea of romance? You're terrible at it." He smiled. "You're still bad at compliments." "Then let me try again." He stepped closer. "I want you to stay, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because I want to be the place you choose." Silence. The kind of silence that echoed. Then, finally, Serina exhaled, slow and shaky, and smiled. Not the sharp smirk she wore like armor, but the soft, crooked kind that felt like spring after too many winters. "Fine," she said, "but only if I get to scandalize you first." He tilted his head. "I thought you already did." Serina laughed, and for the first time she wasn't rewriting someone else's story. She was writing her own. The first official scandal of Lady Serina Valehart and General Thorne's union wasn't a duel. It wasn't even the announcement of their engagement. It was a dinner, a simple diplomatic dinner where Serina, now known in whispered tones as the lady who tamed the warhound, stood up during dessert, clinked her glass and announced, "My future husband thinks formal galas are boring, so we're turning the next state banquet into a masquerade ball, with swords and live music, possibly fire eaters." The Duchess of Airland dropped her fork. The ambassador from Vespia blinked 3 times and muttered a prayer. General Thorne? He just smiled and passed her the wine. Because this was their life now. Not quiet, not perfect, but theirs. They never married in a palace. Serina didn't want chandeliers. She wanted the stars. So they exchanged vows in the garden behind her family's estate, under paper lanterns and stolen moonlight, with only the people who mattered. Milla cried through the entire ceremony. The crown prince and Lady Amelina sent a gift, a painting of Serina mid-laugh, surrounded by scandalous headlines turned into poetry. Even her brother attended, begrudgingly, awkwardly, but there. The Duke, of course, claimed he was too ill to appear. Serina sent him a thank you basket anyway. It included a bottle of wine, a scroll titled How to Raise Daughters Without Ruining Them, and a note. No hard feelings, just better endings. Years passed. And Serina kept her promise. She never got boring. She hosted debates between scholars and stable boys. She built a scandal museum in the west wing of her new home, featuring exhibits such as The Dress I Ripped at That One Ball and The Time I Danced with a Pirate Lord, probably. She funded clinics. She adopted stray animals. She taught etiquette classes that included how to win an argument without raising your voice or your fan. And the general? He watched her with that same quiet awe, that same fond exasperation. And when people asked him how he put up with her, he always said the same thing. She saved me before she even knew me. I'm just lucky she stayed long enough for me to catch up. One evening, years after their wedding, Serina stood on the balcony, watching the sun bleed gold across the horizon. Behind her, the manor buzzed with music, another celebration, another small gathering that had somehow attracted half the nobility. She sipped her wine, let the breeze play with the ends of her hair, and smiled to herself. This wasn't the story she was meant to have, but it was the one she stole back. And just as the general stepped beside her, wrapping an arm around her waist, she whispered, "You know, I think I finally believe in happy endings." He raised a brow. "Even ours?" She grinned. "Especially ours." Then, after a pause, she added, "But tell me, darling, do you think the world is ready for what we do next?"